Okay, we're just about ready to start. Okay. All right, good evening. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Cumberland School Committee to order at 7:21 p.m. on Thursday, February 25th, 2021. In accordance with Governor Raimondo's Executive Order 21-10 dated February 3rd, 2021, the Cumberland School Committee intends to conduct this meeting remotely. The public can participate in this meeting remotely, but not in person, by calling 1-301-715-8592, webinar ID 988-6151-9454, or they can join via Zoom, which is on the district website on the events calendar. That's where you can find the link to join the meeting. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. You may remain seated. I pledge
allegiance to the flag
of the United States
of
of
America
and
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda in compliance with Governor's Executive Order 21-10 dated February 3rd, 2021. Discussion or vote on whether there is public access to the meeting through adequate alternative means. And yes, Mr. Chandler, thank you. And I see 59 participants on Zoom. So I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mrs. Feather, second by Mr. DeMonica. All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it 7-0. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have one item on this, one item that we need to remove that we're not ready to approve tonight, which is item A1, minutes from the Town Council School Committee joint meeting. So we will be taking items A and B. So A, approval of minutes. Item 2, regular meeting, February 11th, 2021. Item 3, special meeting, February 12th, 2021. Section B, approval of minutes. Number 1, executive session, February 11th, 2021. So I need a motion to approve items A and B.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Mrs. Rogalski, second.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it, 7-0. And then the last item under the consent agenda is the personnel actions. And, just to state it for the record, the retirement after 32 years of service of Ann Crocker in the mathematics department at McCourt Middle School, in the appointment of Davina Alejo, a one-on-one paraprofessional at Ashton. So I just need a motion to approve the personnel actions in the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Mrs. Rogalski,
Second.
second by Mr. Fiorello. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, 7-0. Next item on the agenda is report out of executive session meeting. Report out of executive session meeting on February 25th, 2021. Report out of executive session votes. There were no votes taken in executive session. And the next item is a vote to seal minutes of the executive session. I need a vote to seal the minutes.
I'll motion to seal.
Motion by Ms. Smith, seconded by
Second.
second by Mrs. Rogalski. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, 7-0. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Over to you, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the school committee and everyone else in attendance this evening. I would like to start first, Madam Chair, with recognizing some students who have performed exceptionally, and I will share with you this nice information in just a second. I would like to share with you an email that I received from Amanda Santo, the leader of our very talented choral students. And she sent me the following email. I am pleased to share with you that 2 of our choral students have been selected to participate in the National Association for Music Education Eastern Honors Ensembles. Heather Bliss will perform with the All Eastern Treble Choir, and Harry Kenyon will perform with the All Eastern Mixed Choir. So they will actually perform with other members of this organization. And like everything else, you know, the traditional way that it's done has been impacted by the pandemic. She goes on to say, due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the Eastern Division of the National Association for Music Education has made the decision to transition the combined All Eastern Conference and Honors Ensembles, originally scheduled to take place in April in Hartford, Connecticut, to an entirely online virtual event. The virtual event will include several rehearsals with the 2021 All Eastern conductors, workshops with renowned clinicians, and each ensemble will create a final recorded performance which will be premiered online. This is a great honor, and it will be a wonderful experience for our students. Please join me in congratulating Heather and Harry for being identified as outstanding choral students. Congratulations to the 2 of you. I saw that I think Heather is in the audience. Heather Bliss, congratulations to you, Heather. And I don't know if Harry is in attendance, but congratulations to the 2 of you. I did see that Amanda Santo was in attendance. Amanda, I don't know if there's anything that you would like to share this evening.
Thank you so much for taking the time to recognize our students. Considering everything that's been happening this year, I'm just so proud of them that they're continuing to make music and they're continuing to further their music education, and they're going after these opportunities that help move them forward in their musicianship.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you for your leadership and continuing the great tradition of the Cumberland High School Chorus. So congratulations to all of you. Good for you. I would also like to recognize 2 soccer players, 2 members of the girls' soccer team that were selected to the all-state team. Congratulations to Riley Trudeau, who is a junior, and congratulations to Juliet Vemmer, who is a senior. Congratulations to the 2 of you for your outstanding performance, athletic performance. And, you know, for all of the students that I just mentioned, I know this isn't about me, but I can tell you that, you know, I had the good fortune when I was in high school of being selected to an all-state team. And even at this age, it is still an honor that I hold dear, and that will never change. So to all of the students who we've recognized this evening, congratulations to you for your outstanding performance, and thank you for representing the Cumberland School Department so well. We really appreciate it. So congratulations to Riley and Juliet for being all-state, for making the first team all-state girls soccer team. Good for you. Okay, moving on, Madam Chair. There is a retirement that we would like to announce this evening. Cindy Otis is an administrative assistant at the high school, we would like to recognize her for her years of service. And I believe that Mr. Costa is here and he would like to say a few words about Miss Otis. Adolfo.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I appreciate it. I did want to take just a moment on behalf of the staff at CHS to congratulate Cindy on her retirement. Back in 2013, we started together in the main office of the high school, where she's been ever since. Cindy is often the first point of contact for students, for staff, and for the community. And she has embraced that responsibility with grace and dedication. We know that for some time, there has been an interest in joining her grandchildren down in Florida, and she is excited about her move. And for that, we are excited for her as well. But we know that because of everything she does for our community, a list too long to begin to tackle, her shoes will be difficult to fill. Congratulations, Cindy.
Congratulations, Cindy. And it's my understanding that Cindy already has a plan in place. She's going to be moving to sunny Florida to be closer to, I guess, one of her children, I believe a daughter and the grandchild. So good for you, Cindy. And if you could check out some real estate down there for me while you're there, I would really appreciate it. Congratulations. Thank you, Adolfo. Madam Chair, the next item that I would like to share with everyone is the updated spreadsheet on positive cases and the impact that that's having on the district. Mike, can you please pull that up? Thank you, Mike. You know, this is just something that we like to share with everyone at each of our school committee meetings. We ask our administrators to update it on a weekly basis. And the good news is the trend here in Cumberland is consistent with the trend that we're seeing in Rhode Island and nationally. So there are fewer and fewer positive cases. Of course, one positive case is too many, but as you can see, the numbers, the increase from the last time that we reviewed this together, that there is not a significant increase in the number of positive cases. And whenever there are positive cases, as you know, it does impact a close contact. So unfortunately, those individuals are in a situation where they have to quarantine. But I think the trend is a positive one, but that is something that we will continue to share with you on a regular basis. Thanks, Mike. Can you please put up the presentation? Did somebody have a question?
Yeah, may I ask a question about that?
Of course.
Thank you. It looks like I wanted to make sure I was reading it correctly because it looked like the numbers had gone up, but only gone up slightly. Is that
right? That's
okay?
The trend. Yeah.
Okay, just because I know that the state has been, it's been up and down within the state, but it's something that I think that we need to obviously keep track of, which you are doing a great job of as we move to in person.
One really, I think, important piece of information that would be helpful for everyone to know. There are a number of districts that are doing and I may have talked about this before, Binax testing. So this is where, individuals in the school department, they're trained and they actually, do test students and staff. It can be done very quickly. The results, I believe, can be, you can get back the results in as little as 15 minutes. Anyway, to make a long story short, in a meeting with Laura Canavan, our point of contact at the Education Operations Center, she shared with us at our task force meeting yesterday afternoon that there are a number of students and staff that are being tested statewide, and the positivity rate is 0.3%, not 3%, 0.3% for students and staff. So that is, I think, a number that should make everyone feel comfortable, especially as we go into the next item on the superintendent's report, and that is the next steps for in-person learning. So Mike, can you please pull up that presentation? So what I've done, everyone, is I've just taken some of the slides from the last meeting, and probably half the number. I just wanted to give everyone an update as to where we are. We continue to work extremely hard as an administrative team in getting ready to bring students back. So I think this first page, our most important goal is to, get as many students in school for more in-person learning as possible. And again, and this is not all of the districts in the state that are doing at least 4 days of in-person learning. Some of these districts, by the way, are doing 5 days of in-person learning. So I think that is our ultimate goal, but we want to be one of these districts that are doing 4 days of in-person learning. Next slide, please, Mike. So here is the timeline that we shared with all of you last week. As you all know, our goal is to bring in students in grades K1 and 2 beginning next Tuesday. And again, there has been lots of communication between the principals and staff and families in preparation for March 2nd. The week after, the week of March 8th and March 9th is actually Tuesday, as you know, virtual. We're still going to be continuing with virtual Mondays, but the following week, we're going to bring in grades 3, 4, and 5. And then our hope is to bring in the middle schools the 16th of March. And then grade 12, we really want to provide a meaningful experience for seniors at the end of their high school tenure. We want to do that on March 9th, and our goal is to bring in 9th graders on the 16th. Now, I know that there are people thinking, well, geez, what about 10th and 11th graders? We need to be concerned about social distancing, and I don't want for a second for anyone to think that we're not going to be bringing in 10th and 11th graders, but we really need to figure out how we can do that and do that safely, and at the same time work to meet all of the guidelines that have been established by the Rhode Island Department of Health and the CDC. Next slide, please, Mike. Okay, so I always think it's important to make everyone aware that we are really focusing our attention on safety. And I've been through these things before. So, we need to, and we are able to maintain 3 feet of space between student desks in all of the classrooms that we'll be bringing students back to. And, we want our teachers to maintain at least the 6 feet of space whenever possible. I've mentioned this before, at least 4 feet of space in the cafeteria between students, 10 feet of space between tables of students in the cafeteria. And because of the size, we've talked about this many times, because of the size of the cafeteria in some of our elementary schools, we need, unfortunately, to be eating in classrooms. And I have had many conversations with the Department of Health about that. We know that students and staff have to wear their masks at all times. The only time that they would be able to remove their mask is when eating or drinking. And then when they're done eating and drinking, they need to reapply their mask. And this is something I want to remind everyone that's being done in all of those school systems in some fashion that I identified on the first slide. Next slide, please, Mike. Okay, we've talked about this at great length. I have to believe I've mentioned this before, that Cumberland has done probably more work than most districts, if not all districts, on ventilation. We are utilizing the air purification units that we purchased and the ones that were provided by the state to make sure that we are meeting those 4 to 6 air exchanges per hour. And one of the things that I have shared on a regular basis is the fact that given the work that we did in the fall, there are spaces where students and staff will meet that are meeting the 4 to 6 air exchanges per hour without the air purification units. But we know that there are, I think there may be some peace of mind in having one of these units in their space. And we, I believe, have provided an air purification unit in just about every space where students and staff meet in the district. And I will have a conversation again tomorrow with Will DeJesus, our facilities manager, to make sure that we have one in every classroom, even those that really, to be honest, don't need them, because we do have them. And PPE, we will make sure that PPE is available in every building, hand sanitizer, masks, those kinds of things, and providing frequent opportunities for students to wash their hands. Next slide, please, Mike. I mentioned this before. We have been very fortunate to get these sprayer units. These sprayers use this chlorinated sanitizing and disinfecting solution. This is a solution that is used in hospitals, nursing homes, restaurants, schools. Everyone should feel really good about that. They're safe. It is a safe solution, and at the same time, sanitizes all of the spaces where students and staff will be meeting. It's a pretty impressive thing. And I can tell you that, and I'm sure if you talk to any of the staff in the district, they'll tell you that they will walk into their classrooms or our offices, and if you have anything, if you have any paper left on your desk, they do sometimes get wet from whatever it is they're spraying in the corners of our paperwork that's left out, curls up. So I think that's evidence that all of these spaces are sprayed on a regular basis. Next slide, please, Mike. Okay, just wanted to give you all some sense of where we are with enrollment. I did present this at the last school committee meeting. And here's the thing that I think is most important. When you look at the number of students that are deciding to be in person for 4 days a week, when you consider that, over 1,300 students will be in person for 2 additional days, I think that is a really good thing. And I think that will be beneficial without question to our students. So I just wanted to give you some sense. And I know that there are probably going to be some questions about the middle and high school and the number of students that are in person versus distance learning. We'll provide that soon, if I can get that information in my superintendent's communication, my weekly communication tomorrow, I will do that. If not, we'll get it out to everyone as soon as possible. But that gives you some sense of the number of students who will benefit from more in-person learning. Next slide, please, Mike. We have been working with Durham regarding transportation. Well, we know that the guidelines for transportation have not changed. So we are in a position where we can put as many as 36 students on a bus. That is, if siblings and students who may be in the same household with other students, we can fit up to 36 students on a bus. And if there are no siblings, then we can put as many as 20 on the bus. Now, I can tell you that is an issue that comes up regularly at our weekly superintendent meetings. There is a feeling that we need to be able to put more students on the bus. And remember, all students must wear a mask while they're on the bus. So it appears in our conversations, and the administrators, the principals and others have been meeting with Durham on a regular basis. We met with them today, in fact, and it looks like we're in good shape numbers wise, with the elementary students at this point. We'll be watching that very closely. And the only thing that I wanted to mention to everyone is, because we are essentially doubling the number of students that are going to be riding the bus on a daily basis at the elementary level, there is a possibility that there might be a slight change in the pickup and drop off times, not significant, but I just wanted to let everyone know that there may be a slight difference in pickup and drop off, and any differences that we learn about over the next day or two, we'll make sure that we provide that information so that you all, families, parents, can see what, if any, changes there are to those pickup times. And again, I want to stress that they will be minimal, but I don't know that it would be appropriate for me to suggest that we're going to, be able to, pick up students at the exact time that they have been recently. So there may be a slight adjustment in that. The other thing I think is important for people to know is I had a conversation, and we've had several conversations with the Cumberland Police Department, and they know that we're bringing more students in next week, and they will be more attentive at all of our schools to help if needed. And we know that there are a couple of schools, and I'm just using Community as an example, given the location and the sheer volume of students, where we're going to need some help from the police, at least initially, as we work our way through the new routine. I hope that this is comforting, not only to students, and staff, but also to parents. We will be working closely with the Education Operations Center, or EDOC. And as I mentioned in my presentation at the last school committee meeting, the Education Operations Center is the organization that was created to help schools with this very issue, bringing students and staff in for more in-person learning safely. They have a wealth of experience. Laura Canavan is our point of contact. She is a nurse practitioner, and she has a wealth of experience. She's been doing this since last March, and she will be visiting, in addition to other members of her team, including representatives of the Department of Health, which I hope is comforting for everyone. We'll be visiting all of the schools, and we'll do it as often as we need to, by the way. She's been incredibly supportive and helpful, maybe because she's a Cumberland grad, but we're going to be visiting all of the schools, and they will be assessing all of the routines that we have established to address the situation that we're in with this pandemic. And I think it's important to mention, as I always do, and as I do in my weekly communication, that there may be a few bumps in the road along the way. If you have any school-specific questions, please contact your principals. They've done a great job. I can't say enough about the leadership in all of our schools. And I know that teachers have been actively involved in this and have been informed every step of the way as to how we're going to bring more students back. And I know that they have also been in contact with parents and families as well. And, everyone is working really hard here. And I think we need to acknowledge that. I know that people are tired, and, every experience is a new one, and everyone is doing the very best that they can. So I just hope that everyone understands that. And I know that many of the emails that I get from parents are very, understanding of the challenges that we're faced with. And I do appreciate that. Mike, I think that might be the last slide. Okay.
Yeah, that's the last slide.
Okay, thanks. Okay, all right, thanks, Mike. Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to present this information this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. And there may be some questions from the committee. So I'd like to open that up if anyone has any comments or questions for Mr. Mitchell. Ms. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Mitchell, just want to clarify in the elementary schools, the K through second beginning for the 4 days in the week next week, the 3 through 5 students are still going to be on their 2-day a week at the same time before transitioning to the 4-day week the following week?
I'm glad you mentioned that because that is an important point. You are correct. So those 3, 4, and 5 fifth grade students will be continuing in their assigned on their assigned virtual days. Thank you for asking that.
Thank you.
Mr. Collins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few of us had the opportunity to take a look at some of the schools, many of the schools over vacation week, and I should also thank the principals who made that happen from their vacation week. But at the elementary level, at K through 2, one of the sticking points in order for this to work, according to the people at the ground level, was TAs. They needed TAs in those classrooms to help facilitate the kids at home in a variety of things. And there was a concern that there would be a shortage. So now we're going into Tuesday morning. Has that TA issue at the K through 2 level or maybe the K through 3 level been resolved moving into in-person learning, returning on Tuesday?
Well, I will give you my response to that, Mr. Collins, and I don't know if Mrs. Duncanson wants to join in here, but we have been able to meet that issue partially. We are still looking for folks to help out in a few other classes. So it is something that we are striving to accomplish. So we're partially there, but we still, have some work to do. And I know that Mrs. Duncanson is working really hard at getting some support in some of those classrooms. I don't know, Mrs. Duncanson, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, we're just continuing to work. There's been a lot of movement leaves this week that have changed our plan. I thought we were in really good shape, and then we had some more leave of absences that made us have to redeploy. So we are shifting and we are adapting and we are working, but it changes every day. And so as I shared with the end of day tomorrow is my goal to have a basis for where we are, but I'm not 100% staffed. I hope to be close tomorrow, but I'm also not a miracle worker.
I understand. Now, the other thing that came up was the issue of live streaming at the K through 2 level. And according to the administrators, there wasn't, hopefully this has been resolved too. Has everything been negotiated with the CTA? There was a concern over live streaming at that level. And I haven't heard anything since the last meeting. Has that been resolved going into Tuesday?
We are, we have been working with the CTA on that. And, this is one of those, unanticipated consequences that have resulted as from the pandemic. But we actually met with the CTA today, and we are working on getting more support for those teachers because that seems to be the biggest issue, as you can imagine. Streaming with kindergarten students and first grade students is not an easy thing to do. So we recognize that, and that's part of this work that we're doing, trying to get more help in there. And based on our meeting, that the union is willing to give us some time to address that issue. So we're working on it. And just so that you know, we're talking about, I believe it's 6 classes, maybe even less than that, but 6 classes out of 90 something classrooms in the district. So unfortunately, we do have these issues that we have to address, and we're working on it.
And to follow up on Mr. Collins' question, oh, sorry. If for those 6 classrooms, if those issues are not resolved by Tuesday, what will we do with those 6 classrooms?
Well, I think under the circumstances, hopefully that will happen. All we can do is the best that we can under the circumstances, and I don't know what else to say except that, because I would never make any promises that we can't keep. And we're gonna, on Monday, assess where we are, and if we got to make a decision, then we'll make a decision. But our goal is to get some help in there for those folks.
Okay, Ms. Smith?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Mitchell, or maybe Katie, you could answer this question. Can we look for the parent assistants or assistants coming in while trying to hire TAs? Can we look at that situation? Because I know, I understand the complexities of it, and certainly at a couple of schools that are not multiple tracks at higher levels, like maybe perhaps community is. What can we do? And if I have to go in and volunteer, I would go in and volunteer if it requires some help. And I'm sure there's some parents that would feel the same way about trying to assist.
I'm glad you brought that up, Mrs. Smith, because and I mean this sincerely, I thought about that very thing today after the conversation that we had with the union leadership. I do believe that there are some highly skilled parents out there who may be in a position that can help us. And you know what, I'm going to make a note of it now, and I'm going to include that in my superintendent's weekly communication, unless somebody thinks there's an issue with that. But I would agree that there are some talented parents out there who are, like you, willing to help. So I will do that.
And can I just add one thing? If there are parents that are interested in even helping temporarily, not even a full, a commitment, please have them contact my office, and we will absolutely, and we will compensate people for working for the district. So it's not even that, we are willing to pay. It's just it's a tough time to get people in school. But if there are people you don't have to commit to a certain number of days, we would like to hire qualified people. So,
and that is a resource that we've talked about, because subs have been an issue pre-pandemic. So that is, I think, a resource that we, may be able to tap into, not only at this particular time, but moving forward as well.
And this may be a question for Mr. Adams or yourself, Mrs. Duncanson. Certainly, like I said, I would step up and volunteer, but as a school committee member, is that acceptable? Is it still acceptable if I were to help and volunteer and put myself up there for days? I just want to make sure that I'm not doing anything, and I certainly would not be looking for compensation.
There is an ethics, Mr. Fiorello, you may know this, there's an ethics opinion about volunteering, and it doesn't preclude volunteering by school committee members.
Right. We can't have a paid position in the schools based on the town charter, but I'm a firm believer that school committee people should volunteer. It gets you into the schools, during a normal year, I'm a regular weekly volunteer at BF Norton, and it's killing me that I can't be there. But yeah, I'm sure they would love to have you.
Yeah.
There we go. Sign me up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Rogalski? Oh, you're muted.
My space bar is not working. Following up on that question and what Mr. Mitchell mentioned, how is the sub pool looking? I'm hoping that with all the people who wanted their children to go back to school so badly, they also wanted to volunteer to help make school a success and sub. And maybe there are some more subs out there.
So honestly, if I can say, as soon as we hire subs, we place them. So we don't have a pool of available subs available. There are a lot of leaves this year that are that have taken. But that being said, we have probably more subs regularly employed than we have in my experience. So there isn't a huge pool, but we have some.
Okay.
And we're trucking along.
Yeah, and every district in the state is dealing with the same issue. And remember how the governor was on several occasions talked about these hundreds of individuals that were trained to sub and help us. I've said this before and I'll say it again. And I think at one time she talked about 150 or 300. It doesn't make any difference if it's 150 or 300. You know how many we saw? 0. Not one. So subs are an issue now, and they have been an issue. And it's something that we've talked about as superintendents for several years.
Any other comments or questions? I just want to add that I was able to visit, as several members were, some of the schools last week, and want to certainly especially thank the custodial staff that I saw in every school, rearranging classrooms and spacing things out and moving everything around. They were working really, really hard, as well as the building administrators and teachers that were in there, everyone trying to make it work. So I want to thank everyone, at the school level who is definitely putting in extra effort on top of everything else that they've already been putting extra effort in.
If I may, Madam Chair, thank you for mentioning that. One of the things that I've learned is that, sometimes when you start to identify people who have gone above and beyond and who are working really hard, that we might sometimes, or I might sometimes, leave people out. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that. Will DeJesus and the maintenance and custodial staff have been working really hard, in addition to all of the staff and all of the schools. So thank you for mentioning that.
Okay, so let's see, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is reports of standing committees. The first one is the Fiscal Management Subcommittee update. Mr. DeMonica.
Madam Chair, the Fiscal Subcommittee meeting did meet tonight at 5:15. We did not have any payment of bills this time, but on our next agenda, we'll have the payment of bills to Blackstone Valley Prep for consideration again. There was no business office monthly report. We did hear from Shauna Spillane from Sedesco Food Services. We did very well for revenue this time for the past month, but the school district is still running a negative balance of about $3,800, and that should go away hopefully soon enough when we get more students back into school. So it is still running a negative balance for the food services. And we heard from Mr. Will DeJesus. We had a little issue in the pool area that's been fixed for now, and a new part is coming in on Tuesday. And we did have discussion tonight about replacing 25 univents at the high school. They were not included in the $79 million bond. But with discussion with RIDE over the replacement of these units, they've kind of given us the nod that it's something we should do. And so we approved it tonight, and the funding for this will happen at the end of the year or at the end of the bond to move the money over. So it's resolving an issue at the high school with some older univents like we have in the trans building as well. So that was the full meeting tonight for the fiscal subcommittee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeMonica. Next, the Policy and Procedures Subcommittee update. Mr. Fiorella.
Yes, Policies and Procedures did meet on this past Tuesday. We discussed two items. One is the J3 teen dating violence policy, which was due for an update. That policy was tabled. What's going to happen is Dr. Masterson and some of his people have been working on the bullying policy. So that'll be a discussion in 2 weeks, and we're going to more than likely make some small changes to the teen dating policy because there's some overlap in the policies. So we'll probably vote to approve those or make further amendments at that time. We also discussed again the J10 immunization policy, and that will be on the agenda later for the approval of the first reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fiorello. The next item is the Achievement and Communications Subcommittee update, and unfortunately, the Achievement and Communications Subcommittee was not able to meet, but should be meeting in March before the next meeting. The next item on the agenda is the District Health and Wellness Subcommittee update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am still waiting on two principals to submit their new members for the committee, but besides that, we are ready to go for a committee meeting with new members.
Great, thank you. The next item on the agenda is public hearing. Mr. Fiorello, do you want to take these ones?
Yes. So I would just ask for approval, or just that J10 immunization be read into the record. Because it's a new policy, it will require 2 readings before we can vote on it. So that'll come up in 2 weeks. And then J3 had been tabled, so there is no reading of that policy.
Okay. All right, so it'll be coming up for a vote to read it in, the immunization one. And there is a public comment listed here that is related to these policies. And then after this, we have an official public comment that's related to anything. So I guess I'd like to open it up to see if there are any public comments related to these 2 policies. So if there's a member of the public that wants to raise their hand, their virtual hand, Mr. Chandler will find you, or *6 to unmute. Do you see anyone, Mr. Chandler?
Not at this time.
Okay. Then that will end the public hearing. The next item on the agenda is our comments from the public. And as usual, please state your name, your address, and there is a 3-minute time limit for public comments. Raise your virtual hand. Mr. Chandler will call on you, and then you'll be able to state your name and your address. Okay, Mr. Chandler?
Nothing at this point. Give him another minute. If you are on the phone, you can use *6 to unmute and *9 to raise your hand. Doesn't look like anything at this time.
Okay, this is the only public comments on the agenda. Just want to make sure this would be the first meeting in many meetings if we don't have any public comments. Okay. Well, then we will move on to new business. The first item under new business is discussion and/or vote to approve certified teacher non-renewals. This is on the agenda for a vote to comply with the collective bargaining agreement of non-renewing, non-tenured teachers. And there are 61 non-tenured teachers that are part of this. And while we may vote to non-renew these 61 non-tenured teachers, we hope to be able to rescind most of these renewals based on performance and budget, in the coming months. This is kind of part of the standard practice, you could say. Mrs. Duncanson, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
No, you said it. Great.
So
I'll make a motion to approve the non-renewals as presented.
Mr. Fiorello makes a motion to approve the non-renewals as presented. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Rogalski. Any discussion? Ms. Smith?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify though, just to state, this is due to the March 1st deadline that we are required to do this as well,
Yes.
just so the public understands that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. This is contractually March 1st that we need to take this action. So we have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it, 7-0. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a discussion to return to in-person school committee meetings. This item was added to the agenda or requested to be on the agenda by Mr. Collins. So Mr. Collins, if you'd like to start the discussion on this.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So after our discussion last week or the last couple of weeks about returning to in-person learning, and that seems to be the trend, I just thought to myself, well, if we're going to put these teachers back in the classroom with all the students, what's prohibiting us as a school committee from returning to in-person meetings? And then I looked around and General Assembly's gathered, and then I reached out to Mr. Adams and checked on the legality of it. So we have a pathway right now to return to in-person learning. And I think it's in-person meetings. And I think it's important. I mean, even if you read any of the correspondence that people are sending us, optically, we're asking people to do something that we're unwilling to do ourselves. And I for one, am prepared to go back to in-person meetings. This can't go on forever. There are merits to Zoom. People can sit in the comfort of their home and watch it. We are comfortable, although I would like to get out of the house once in a while. But we can't go on forever doing Zoom meetings. So I think there's an avenue for starters, just in brainstorming myself. And obviously we're not voting on this tonight, but I think it's time to get the ball rolling. Venue wise, I think a courts gymnasium is adequately spaced out. Obviously we'd have to work out logistics. We'd have to provide adequate access to the public. We'd obviously have to cap in-person meetings. May not be an issue, in-person participants. It may not be an issue on a night like tonight where there's no public comment, but when it comes to budget season, when people turn out in droves, so we'd have to make accommodations to them. But I think, and then we obviously would have to make accommodations for any members of this committee or any administrators who need to be here, who have pre-existing conditions, so on and so forth. So I think we have what it takes to return. And I think we owe it to the teachers and anybody else who has gone back to the classroom or their office to do the same. And I think it's very important that we basically put our money where our mouth is. And I'm prepared to do it. And I think I would like to hear what other members have to say.
Mr. DeMonica.
Madam Chair, I think Mr. Collins is right. I mean, we can't expect our teachers to go back in the classroom or administrators be there every day without us going back as well. So if we can find an appropriate location for the public to gain access, I think we can really do both at the same time, some Zoom and meet in persons for those administrators that may be able not to make it. And I think we should start as soon as we can get going here. Thank you.
Ms. Smith and then Mrs. Feather.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would agree, and I want to get out of the house just as much as everyone else, or maybe just as much as Mr. Collins. And I do believe that we, as the committee, could meet in person and manage that. With that being said, tonight is one of our lowest numbers of participants on the call that we've seen. It went up to 61 participants at one point. On average, we've had well over 100 participants. And I do not want to see us lose the opportunity to have the public. I think the public has been very instrumental in moving us along and really giving us the information that we need and the feedback that we need. And I don't want to lose that. So as Mr. DeModica stated, it would be very important, I believe, to have some type of Zoom still available, and whether that occurs with just the school committee in a meeting with the Zoom with everyone else and the public joining in, that's fine. And certainly we're going to have difficulties if we try to fit everybody in the same room with the 150 maximum guidelines when last call was 181. So just something to keep in mind.
Okay, Mrs. Feather.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have the same point or similar point about the number of folks, a number of participants who have been at our meetings recently. I do think that, and I am hearing that from neighbors who I see occasionally. I do occasionally get out of the house, but mostly via text, that people are able to attend because it's a Zoom meeting, whereas they would be less likely to attend. And I am one of the folks that every now and again, I would go to a school committee meeting, that wasn't a big school committee meeting, and it would be like 3 people there. However, we also, when we talk about putting our money where our mouth is, right? We're putting the teachers in a structured environment where we know how many students are going to be there, or we know the maximum number of students, and we know where people are going to sit, and we know that people are going to be masked, and we know basically that we're controlling the situation as much as we can. I am concerned with opening up a regular meeting at McCourt, and maybe there's a hot button issue on the agenda. What happens when we have 150, 180 people show up? That is a concern to me, and also just a concern as someone with pre-existing conditions. I worry about that as well.
Mrs. Rogalski?
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything that's been said so far. I would love to get out of my house, and I'm completely ready to go to in-person meetings. And, seeing some of you the other day on school tours is the first time I've seen some of you in person ever. So I am definitely a fan of returning, and I have zero problem with that. My concern is with the public. Public access, being able to participate, especially as we enter budget season. I almost wonder if it would be better, and I don't know the legalities of it, to have us meet maybe as normal in wherever, the Trans building or in McCourt, but then still keep the meeting open to the public via Zoom. And kind of like in sports, we're not allowing spectators, kind of do the same approach where we still have a completely open meeting. The public is welcome to attend and participate, but then we don't have to worry, because my concern comes down to, how do we police it? How do we not monitor the number of people coming in? I mean, is one of us going to be standing at the door counting? Do we have someone doing that? How do we police people wearing their masks? I mean, we know that there are still people not wearing masks correctly, or that don't believe in wearing masks. I question who would do all of that. So I am fully ready to go back, and I fully support that if teachers are in, we should be in. But there are some logistics that are concerns to me.
Mr. Collins.
Well, I think this is why we have to start having this discussion now, is because we have to work these things out. But I think Zoom, the fact that people have become so adept at using Zoom, is one of the one of the lone benefits of this whole COVID terror that we've been dealing with in the last year. But I think people would still have access. I mean, we asked teachers to live stream. Why can't we live stream from the dais in which we sit? People could still log in. They could still ask us questions. I've seen situations where we have screens where we could project the public Zoom on there. And I know I don't want to, speak on behalf of Mike, but I think we have the technology to facilitate that, where people can still sit in the comfort of their own home and ask us questions. But again, we will physically be meeting as a group, socially distanced, of course. Maybe we can get some of those cardboard barriers, masks, and so on and so forth. But actually, if you look at the McCourt stage, I mean, there's enough room for us to, 10, 15, there's only, 9 or 10 of us on the dais. So that being said, I think we have an opportunity here. The public will still have access. And then obviously we'd have to figure security. People questions ahead of time. There's a solution is what I'm saying. There's always a solution. And I think we need to get the ball rolling sooner than later. Because students are going back full time on Tuesday. And I think we need to start considering doing the same sooner than later.
Okay, Ms. Smith and then Mrs. Feather.
Yes, and just to add to that, Mr. Collins, well, two things. First, when people are entering into the schools, and I think Ms. Rogalski, you did this well. When people are entering the schools now, we're required to get attestations related to COVID questions. So having our meetings in public at a school in the evening, we would have to look at whether or not we would have to have that same type of commitment, which could be difficult if larger groups show up, especially during budget season. But as Mr. Collins mentioned, if we have a screen or something where we can still have the public, I think that volume and speech, and especially if we have our masks on, we do have to look at all of that. And then we have to make sure that we have the right room or the right area that could be acoustically correct for our voices so they carry through onto the Zoom for the public. So I don't know if that's Mr. Chandler maybe starting to look at those opportunities or look to areas that we may have, but just a thought on it.
Mrs. Feather?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Thank you. I actually agree with a lot of what Ms. Smith just said. A couple of things that I actually wanted to bring up. First, I think we are legally still required to Zoom meetings, even if we do meet in person. So I think we're still under that executive order. So, I don't think that makes any difference. I think we still need to Zoom our meetings if we, or provide Zoom access to our meetings.
We have to provide alternative, whatever it says.
The thing you say at the beginning of the meetings, we have to do that.
If you're not going to provide public access, to the typically public access to the meeting.
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, I would be in favor of just the school committee meeting. However, I would also want to make sure that we would be masked at all times. So again, I've lost several people this year. So I take no chances.
And Mr. DeMonica?
Madam Chair, I just want to say that whatever area we select or school we go to, that we don't create a burden for the maintenance people to sterilize that space all over again for the students coming in the morning. And we have to be aware of that if we have public coming into the meetings and sitting in chairs and so forth, that everything needs to be sterilized again. We only got 12 sprayers in the district, and there'll be a large area to get cleaned and prepared for another group of people coming in the next morning. So it's a start, and I agree with Mr. Collins. Let's figure it out. Let's work it out and get back to doing the people's business. Thank you.
And yeah, Mr. Pregnano.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to say it's obvious that the teachers are much more effective in-person learning. And that's why we've requested that we go back to in-person learning, right? Just the way, at least for me, I'm 1,000 times more effective when I'm in the office. And I go in the office every day because I'm a better employee in the office. But as far as a school committee on a Zoom, I'm equally able to handle a Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting. My performance isn't really any different. I'm able to get facts out, just make presentations, etc. I know I take zero risks. I haven't been out to eat in a year. I don't shop. I have everything delivered to me. I'm not prepared. I would take advantage. I would want to be one of those people who would say, I'm zooming in. I don't want to be around 150, 200 people at McCourt in June with the summer. Different story. You get people vaccinated. We get to July, August, and the country's been vaccinated. That's a different story. But there's no reason just for optics for people like me to come back to a meeting. Going into work during the day, different story, because my performance is better, just like the teacher's performance is better. But Madam Chair, you're equally as, your performance is the same whether you're on Zoom or in person. And I would caution on the side of safety before anything else. That's just what I wanted to say.
And the only other thing that I would add, and then we can move on because I think this is great discussion and we should continue to have it, is that to many points that people have made, is that I think we need to do what's best for the public. We have seen, as you all know, been on this before. I mean, last August, I think we had almost 600 people attending our meetings, and we've had way more engagement than we ever did before in our meetings. And I think we need to do what's most accessible and right for the public, just like we want to do what's most accessible and right for the students. So I think there are a lot of logistics that we'd have to figure out to see how that would work. But I think, we're here to serve the public, and I think we should do what will be best for the public. So thank you for requesting this, Mr. Collins, and we will continue to talk about this. The next item on the agenda is the discussion of the statewide school calendar 2021-2022. And I believe that was shared with all of you, that RIDE has a standard calendar that they're kind of requiring everybody to follow for the vacations and the professional development days, but giving the districts the ability to look at religious holidays, school start date, and I think maybe school end date too. Mr. Mitchell, you can fill in any of the gaps that I might get wrong here. So I think we just wanted, I think you had some things you wanted to share in terms of discussing the calendar, and then we will have to vote in terms of school start date and religious holidays. And I don't know if there's anything else on there, Mr. Mitchell, that we would have to vote on when we vote on the calendar.
Yeah, I think just to build on some of the things that you've shared, Madam Chair. And by the way, one of the things that we need to do at some point before a vote is taken is we need to share this information, any thinking that we have around the calendar with the union. But the calendar that was presented to you, and that and as Madam Chair has said, is the intent of this calendar is to align professional development days and vacations so that districts can plan accordingly. So not only for the purpose of vacations, but also for the purpose of utilizing professional development days that would allow us to work with colleagues from across the state and take advantage of any professional development opportunities that RIDE might create. We have been told by the Department of Ed that we do have some flexibility with the start of school. So, the committee may have an interest in bringing students and staff in before that first full week in September. So that is something to consider. And I think there may be some interest in that. The calendar that you have before you includes 180 days, and I think there are 4 professional development days, believe it or not, are included as part of the 180 instructional days. At this time, the Cumberland, the contract between the CTA and the school committee requires 4 additional professional development days, and that is something that we would have to work out. But I think the important thing that we all need to consider is whether or not you would like to, begin the school year before Labor Day. And I also think that, one of the things that, that the school committee needs to consider is how to handle the most recent calendar that came out, all of those additional holidays that you all made a decision on last year. So I think there are a number of things that need to be considered. And I know that, reviewing the calendar and planning the calendar is something that generally takes more than just one meeting to decide on what you want to do for the upcoming school year.
Okay. Ms. Smith, did you have a question?
No, I was going to say, I think there were 3 professional days. I thought on the calendar, but I was just trying to look it up.
I see 4. I see 4, Mrs. Smith. There are 2 on Wednesday, I believe the 1st, and Thursday, the 2nd of September. There is one on Monday, the March 14th, and then one on May 11th.
Right. I apologize. It is.
That's okay. Yeah. No, that's okay.
I probably just didn't pay attention to those, not knowing if we were going to start in the following week or not. So, and it seems that from counting the 180 days, that if we went by the state calendar, that June, we would be ending at the beginning of June. Is that correct? Is somebody? I think it's,
I counted the days as well. And usually if they, with the 180 days that they require, I don't know why they didn't include the 10 days. I think there's 10 days in June. That would be the 14th of June, I believe.
And that's based upon all the additional holidays if we vote to take those on as well.
That I believe is correct, yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yeah, it says on the calendar in fine print in June, it says LEA decision. So so if you're saying the 14th, it would be the last day if we took 180 days. But if you look at, so I'm guessing then that looking at the calendar in August, in case I missed this, the 30th and 31st are days we could use, we don't have to use. That's our option. Am I correct in reading that?
Yeah, I think, you could start earlier if you wanted to, but yes, I believe that is correct. Yes.
Now, you would also mention that we have the built-in professional days, but the CTA contract calls for, was it 4 more professional days that you have to? So I'm not going to speak on behalf of anybody, but because when I first saw it, I'm like, the kids are going back the 30th and the 31st, and then they're going into PD days. That doesn't make any sense. So that would be a possible, and I know you've done this in the past, correct? You've built in PD in the beginning of the year to get the year started, and then the kids return.
That is correct. Yes.
All right. So that would be an option. Okay. I'm just asking for clarification. So I get it now. Thank you.
And the vacations, Mr. Mitchell, are required. That's the ride thing.
Well, that's a good point because, I asked for clarification, and right now I believe that this is part of an executive order, this calendar, I think for that very reason. And I don't know if that will change, but that is what that information has been provided to us.
Yeah. So if any of you recall previous years in the school committee when we would talk about whether we will have February vacation or not have February vacation, which used to be the biggest topic that we talked about. Like this year and in this calendar, that would be February vacation would be in there, and of course April vacation. Mrs. Feather?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify and make sure that I heard everything correctly and read everything correctly with what you sent us ahead of time. The vacations are required. Some of the holidays we could pick and choose which ones we wanted to accept. That's true, correct? Okay, so if we, okay. Yeah, so if, and I don't know how we would do this, but I was looking at, all of the days, and I was thinking if we could compare our calendar in years past to what this calendar had, and then, calculate how many days we might save if we looked at some of the what's the word I'm looking for? Some of the days that we've never had off, then that could potentially get us before the 14th as well.
And if I could, Madam Chair, Ms. Feather, you're correct. And I did go through that, and it appeared to be 4 additional days that did come on under the executive order from last year, of this school year, and then this as well. And then 1 day that was taken off, or maybe I'm incorrect. Nope, I'm not seeing correctly. It is Good Friday is still there. I was going to say, I thought that was a debatable at one point as well.
Yeah. And the only other thing that I would add, that there was a version of this calendar before this version, which had the first day of school starting on September 7th, like kind of statewide. And it was the president of the Jewish Alliance who actually contacted RIDE and contacted every district and said September 7th is Rosh Hashanah. And that is the holiest, Jewish holiday that you really shouldn't be starting school on the first day of school on a major religious holiday. So then this version of the calendar came out that allows flexibility for the first day of school to allow districts to determine what they want to do about those holidays. And if I would just add, and I do my own focus group in my house because my family is Jewish, that while my daughter and my son don't feel that the Jewish holidays necessarily have to be a day off from school, they do feel it should be on the calendar so that teachers and administrators recognize and understand and don't plan. We've had many instances over the year of school pictures being on a Jewish holiday, Spirit Week being held during a Jewish holiday. So it's not so much that the day necessarily needs to be a day off. That's our decision to make, but that it's recognized across the district that these, that we don't plan things on some of the major religious holidays, not just Jewish. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of that background too. Mr. DeMonica? Oh, you're muted.
I'm sorry. If we adopt the calendar as written here by the state, it's possible the kids will get out on June 14th. And, I don't think that's a bad idea. And we just adopt the calendar as is, and high schools can graduate earlier after the 170th day. So I don't see an issue here adding those holidays in and doing what we do here. I mean, is there an issue with June 14th? Does people want to get out June 1st? I mean, what do you want to do in regards to this? There's no more snow days. We're all done with snow days.
Oh, Mrs. Feather.
It's so funny. Mr. DeMonica, that's exactly what I started to think of after, like, okay, well, for snow days, we could just do virtual days. So we wouldn't be getting out any later than the 14th. That being said, oh my gosh, I have to say that when I was in higher education, we would never schedule anything for that first that first week of September, just because, and also, that we would always be reflective of all of the different holidays as well. What I'm looking at also, though, is if we, and again, I might not be the most optimistic about the pandemic. I'm hoping that most of the world is vaccinated by this point. But wouldn't we want to try to use some of the nicer weather? Wouldn't we want to try to start earlier and use the time in August, and then have, we could obviously have the 6th, 7th, and 8th off. But, we would be starting, the 30th and 31st to try to at least get a couple of days in, and potentially the
Right.
3rd.
Madam Chair, we just have to recognize that we're going to be starting the 5-year plan here for the $79 construction bond, and the school district may need those extra days in the beginning in August to get schools ready and get them open. So it's something we're going to have to look at and plan with the I guess to say with the building committee in regards to what the construction projects are going to look like, so that because we are going to start next year in regards to, we're actually starting this June with the transitional building, and other projects going to start. So we need to keep that in mind when we do this calendar. Thank
Mr.
you.
Collins? Thank you.
I actually never thought of that's actually a good idea. That's why when I asked Mr. Mitchell about the built-in personal days at the end of the year, and then it goes into Rosh Hashanah, that really frees up a lot of space. I like the June 14th deadline, although I don't think we can operate, although it sounds possible, we can't, I don't think, operate under the assumption there's no such thing as a snow day ever. I do believe, at least in Massachusetts, that has yet to be negotiated. There's some issues with it. If the power goes out, whether people agree with it or not, we can't. But anyway, even at the 14th, even if snow days are still a factor, it does build us that time at the end of the month where we don't go past, because I don't anticipate, having a ton of snow days. So June 14th is great. Get out. I'm sure everybody would be really happy about having a longer summer instead of a longer winter.
And Mr. Mitchell?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just, and I'm, forgive me if my assumption is wrong, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows, if you have a color-coded calendar, the green dates that are religious holidays, those are included in the 180 days. So if the committee wanted those days off, you would have to add however many of those religious holidays there are. You would have to add those onto the calendar. I just wanted to, and so historically, Good Friday has been a day off for most school systems, but on this calendar, that would not be the case if we wanted to include that as part of the 180 days.
Mrs. Rogalski?
Yeah, I just counted all those little tiny boxes 3 times. If we adopt the calendar as is, starting with the first PD day on September 1st, and include those calendar holidays, all the religious holidays, that puts us out on June 21st, being the 180th day of school. If we were to move back to, say, the 30th, or even go back the week before, the 26th, which I know has been the date that we've started in previous years, then that will get us back, if we included all those holidays, that would get us back roughly to the 14th. But then you still have to factor in, although the PD days will count as towards 180, even the 4 additional ones that aren't in. Okay, yeah. So if
no, not our 4. Our 4.
Okay, our 4 don't. So you've got 5 religious holidays and 4 PD days to consider. So that's a total of 9 optional days that you've got. So if you adopt as is right now with all the religious holidays, you're getting out on June 21st, but you have to also then factor in 4 more days somewhere. So the 31st, 30th, and the week before, or add 2 days, and then we're getting out on June 23rd. So that's just something to consider in terms of the start date. we might want to look back if we would like to include, if it's important to the committee to include all the religious holidays. Just lots of counting boxes.
Right. And could we, I mean, it's, I guess we could pick and choose which religious holidays to include as official days off versus, you know, just recognizing them on the calendar. So it just seems like there's a few different ways we could look at it. Mrs. Feather?
Yeah, that's what I was questioning in my initially poorly worded statement. I was trying to figure out what we could pick and choose with, because, you know, and I think that we can only pick and choose, if I'm correct, with the religious holidays. Like, would we be able to get rid of Columbus Day or no?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
I don't think I get that. I don't get that off every year, any year.
No, that's in the
Working
contract, I believe.
in the contract. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, because I was looking at some and I'm like, okay, we could we could do that. But yeah, thank you, Amy, or Mrs. Roklowski, for bringing that up.
Yeah, and I think last year when RIDE presented us with two options, the option included all of the religious holidays as a group, if I remember, and we voted as a committee to include all of the religious holidays as a group versus the option that did not include the religious holidays. But now it seems like this year there's some flexibility, and it doesn't seem like it's an all or nothing for the religious holidays, and we can choose that. I think maybe Mr. Mitchell, you could, based on some of what you've heard tonight, present what you usually do is you usually present a couple of options to us of what a start date could be and what an end date could be. And that could be something that will help us vote.
I don't know if I want that pressure, Madam Chair.
Well, we used to
I'm
have to
only
go on
I'm only
separate
kidding.
vacation.
Calendars, right, Mr. Fiorillo? Calendars are always the topic that takes up a lot of our time, understandably.
Okay, so, and Mr. Mitchell, I think you said that is it before we vote on it that it needs to be shared? With
Well, yes, yep. I don't recall specifically what the language in the contract is, but I without question, we need to review it with the CTA. Yes.
Okay, and I think you know, if we can start that process, you know, maybe we'll be in a position at our next meeting to vote on the calendar.
Will do.
Mrs. Heather?
I'm so sorry. One more thing that I keep forgetting to say. Can we poll our parents or survey our parents, or no? Is that not a good idea? I didn't know whether or not we could ask whether or not you know, what their options are. Like if we could present them with a couple different options as well, just to get their feedback. But
Mr. Fiorillo?
Well, to answer Mrs. Feather's question, guaranteed, over the next few days, you will start receiving emails. So they will have their voice heard. But everyone will have a different opinion. That's part of the problem that we've had over the years. That's why I was shaking my head. But to Mr. Collins' point about the snow days, technically, aside from pandemic situations, we would actually have to create a policy to allow virtual snow days I believe that's the way, Mr. Adams, that the law is written, or the direction from RIDE, that we actually have to approve something.
I have to confess, you know more than I do. On the snow day issue, I'd need to look at that, Mark.
Okay, because I remember that discussion like a year ago. I believe the language was something to the effect of school districts may choose to do it or something, which would require us, I would think, to pass a policy on it. So, but I also think that, you know, the union, I would think the teachers would have an issue, because on a snow day, they may have their young children that they're caring for, and now they have to teach a class also. So I'm not sure how any of this would work out, and I don't even know if it's really a good idea post-pandemic.
Mr. Collins, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to add, Mark raised the issue with the snow day again, which was important. But also, I think in my experience with the calendar last year before the pandemic hit was that it looks like we're going to have February and April vacation. And those were really the only sticking points. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? There weren't people, I mean, and I would also caution you, if you attempted to take Good Friday away, there would be problems, or any other religious holiday, depending on, I'm not privy to the sanctity of Jewish holidays or Muslim holidays as I am Catholic or Christian holidays. But I don't think there's going to be as much, as long as we have those vacations kind of set in stone. Remember, the issue with February vacation was
Yeah.
COVID hit and kind of fixed that problem. But yeah, that was an issue.
And then it would often be the issue of, do we start before Labor Day or after Labor Day? That was another one. But okay, this has been a really good discussion. I think Mr. Mitchell can look at this based on what we've discussed tonight. And Mr. Mitchell, we can talk more about that and get an option or options that we could present to vote on.
Will do.
Okay, great. Okay, the next item on the agenda is should be kind of a pretty quick item, but it's discussion of the development of school committee agendas, and wanted to add this to the agenda just based off of some discussion at the last meeting around kind of how does the school committee agenda get set. And so we just wanted to cover some of the legal aspects of it in terms of the timeline of when the agenda needs to be set, but also looking at what kind of discussion outside of the open meeting can happen between school committee members about agenda items. And Mr. Adams and I spoke some about this, and I don't know, some of it maybe didn't seem crystal clear to me, so I thought we could talk about this. So the first one's the pretty easy one, which is what's the deadline for items getting on the agenda, which they need to be legally posted the agenda needs to be legally posted 48 hours before the meeting. So typically Bob has a draft of the agenda. Cindy Shabbat is the keeper of the agenda. Bob shares a draft of the agenda with me, and he and I typically talk about it and maybe involve Mr. Adams if we've got a legal question about how to word something for the agenda, and then Cindy will post that. So there's that part of it, and school committee members can ask for certain items to be on the agenda. But that's the question, Mr. Adams, around, can I or anyone on the committee talk to any or everyone on the committee about potential agenda item topics and not violate the Open Meetings Act?
Okay, so to paraphrase, I think something Mr. Collins may have said at some point tonight, it might have been an executive session, but I don't remember something. The law has a lot of gray in it. The answer is, to a greater extent, no, you really can't be. You can speak with one person or two, but you really can't get past that second person. And a challenge arises when you speak with one. Let's just use people who are here. You speak with Mr. Fiorello and ask him what he thinks of the agenda item or how that should go. He says, oh, I think that's great. Let me ask Mr. Collins. And then he asks Mr. Collins. And so you've only spoken to Mark. Mark's only spoken to Dennis. Dennis has only spoken to Paul, and so forth and so on. You have just had a rolling quorum. You have had a meeting. You have not provided the public with notice of the meeting. And in the hypothetical I just did, you may even have voted on some issue by saying, what do you think about this issue? I think it's a great issue. We should definitely do that. So it's a dicey question, because the question becomes, well, I'm the chair. If it's Mrs. Friedman, am I completely hamstrung? Am I not supposed to speak with my fellow members of the committee prior to a meeting about what the agenda is what's going to be on the agenda and how we're supposed to have this meeting? And the answer to that question is no, you can, but you need to be careful. And it needs to be less than a quorum. And it becomes very difficult to corral that. Very difficult, because you don't know what's happening after you. So to a certain extent, it depends upon your intent. But let me just, I mean, there is no easy answer to it. And it's a reason that often I think school committee members will err on the side of caution, because the whole point of the public meeting process is that the business of the public body takes place in public. And that is, you know, the challenge. And the way it works in most school committees, and certainly in this one, is that there is a policy about the agenda development. And that is that the superintendent, in conjunction with the chair, develops the agenda. And the way that the committee polices that writ large is they select a chair. But then after the chair is selected, the chair, in conjunction with the superintendent, sets the agenda, which is typical, majority leader or whatever you want to call it. But it's kind of a non-answer answer, because it is a very dicey situation. I think it's certainly not inappropriate for any member of the public body to speak with any other member and vet an issue and talk about something that's either going to be on the agenda or they see on the agenda. But it can be very difficult and dicey once that one-on-one conversation becomes a one-on-one on one on one on one. That is absolutely black letter clear a violation of the Open Meetings Act. So that is not gray. But you know, where that slippery slope begins and ends it's impossible to know. So, but I do think certainly committee members should feel free to reach out to their chair and say, hey, I want to talk about this. I want to have this issue on the agenda. For example, the discussion of return to in-person school committee meetings is on the agenda because Mr. Collins asked that it be put on the agenda. The challenge for any member is that they can ask, and it may not get on the agenda for whatever reason. And I don't want to create issues where none exist on this committee by saying that, but it is the prerogative of the chair. So that's sort of a long diatribe. It's very difficult to police that rolling quorum thing. You just have to be cognizant of it. You can have individual conversations, and if your intent is to have individual conversations and nothing more, that is fine. But once you start going down the rolling quorum thing, you're violating the law pretty clearly. I hope that helps. And if there are questions, I can try to answer them.
Mr. Fiorillo?
Yeah, I would just say that I checked a bunch of different school districts' policies. Many don't even have a policy on the agenda. The ones that do all essentially say the same thing. There's a deadline for submitting items to the superintendent. The agendas created by the superintendent in conjunction with the chair of the committee, and some will actually go as far as saying that, you know, committee members should, you know, discuss with the chair any agenda items they would want. And that's essentially, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the way we've done it over the last 8 years, really, is if we have anything we want to bring up, we'll talk to the chair or to the superintendent, and it may come on. And as Mr. Sadam said, it may not come on for whatever reason, or may not come on right away. So
I think you're correct. I mean, members have reached out, whether it be a subcommittee or the full committee, and asked for something to be heard or discussed. And could be achievement, and be other items you want to discuss later on. And they've made it known to whoever the chairperson is of the subcommittee or the full committee, and it goes on the agenda. You know, I don't say no. I wouldn't say no to anyone to put something on the agenda, because we're all equals. We just have a leader to manage us through. So, but that's what's happened in the past. It's been the committee. Mrs. Shabbatz will reach out to the chair and say, here's what the superintendent needs to discuss. The business manager, Mr. Prignano, will reach out to us and say, this is what we need to get on the agenda. Mr. Damana will reach out to achievement and so forth, to get it on the agenda. So, but normally the chair that sets it up.
Okay, and just so I'm clear, Mr. Adams, and I think I know the answer to this question, but I didn't think I know what your answer will be. If I have a one-on-one conversation, if I had a one-on-one conversation with Ms. Smith, okay. But if I had a one-on-one conversation with each person on the school committee, that would not, couldn't be.
That is a rolling quorum. So your intent there, the inferred intent, if you had a one-on-one conversation with every single member, is you're trying to figure out what to do and you want everybody to talk with you about it without having a public meeting. That's why we have a public meeting. So that's why I say it really comes down to your intent when you have each of you, and it's not just you in development of agenda, it's each of you in everything that you do in your job as a member of the school committee. So I'm talking about this more globally. This issue was raised about development of agenda, but it's really about any issue. If your intent, if Ms. Smith's intent in talking to Mr. Fiorello is to just gauge his thoughts on an issue, that's fine, as long as it stays there. But once it starts going other places, it becomes a problem, and it's a violation of the law. So it's really no different for any of you. So you just have to be very careful about the way that you're treading, and try to avoid any situation where it becomes a game of telephone going from one to the other, to the other, to the other. No other way to say it, or what you just articulated, Mrs. Friedman. That is a clear, no doubt about it, violation.
Okay, thank you. So this was on the agenda, so just so we could all better understand, I mean, I think this is my fourth meeting, maybe. And, just wanting to make sure that we're following the process, and that's the hard part. Collaboration outside of the meeting is difficult because the collaboration has to happen in the meeting. And that's, I think, probably different than most of us like to operate, but okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Adams.
Sure.
The next couple of items on the agenda, Mr. Fiorello. The first one is we will vote on this tonight. Wait, no, teen dating violence. That one's tabled?
Yeah, that was tabled. I don't think we need to. Yeah, I guess we should table it here as well. Is that correct, Mr. Adams? Policy was tabled in subcommittee, so we should table it here. You're muted.
Muted.
Which is a good look for a lawyer. So
I think that happened. It's happened twice tonight. I think you actually probably don't need to table it, but I think that would be appropriate to table it here.
I'll make a motion to table J3, teen dating violence.
I'll second the motion.
Motion to table by Mr. Fiorello, or second by Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is that okay? The ayes have it 7-0. Sorry.
Having difficulty muting and unmuting. I apologize, Madam Chair.
And then the next item, Mr. Fiorello, is it to approve the first reading of this policy?
Yeah, I don't see why we can't vote on a first reading. We don't really need to, but why not? I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of J10 immunization.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Fiorello, second by Mrs. Feather. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it 7-0. Okay, the next item, item G and item H. Mr. DeMonica, would you like to take those?
I certainly will, Madam Chair. All right, so we have the first one, SCPR 02-2021-05. It's a resolution empowering the Cumberland School Committee to approve replacing 25 univents in the main building of the high school in an amount not to exceed $700,000. As you know, we've spent a lot of money this year on univents around the entire district, getting them repaired and working properly. And the district has talked to RIDE about possibly moving some money around and fixing some of the really old univents at the high school. We've already approved doing 21 univents in the trans building. This would allow us to move forward and do another 25 univents in the main building of the high school and install energy management controls as well. We've selected E&E of off the state bid list, and E&E has done work for us before. They're planning on doing the work at the trans building. They've been selected to do that work. And we don't want to, I know speaking with Mr. Pregnano, they don't want to have one company come in and install the univents and another company come in and install the control systems. And if something isn't right, who's to blame? So it's been discussed in the building committee about, going with E&E systems here. The payment will come from the $79 million fiscal note for the bond. And the change order will happen later on down the line when they start reconciliation of the spending. So RIDE has given their blessing. I think it's a good idea to do this. And it passed in the fiscal subcommittee meeting on a 3-0 vote. And I would move passage so we can alert the building committee that this has been approved by us.
Okay, Mr. DeMonica makes a motion to approve the resolution SCPR 02-2021-05, replacement of 25 univents at CHS. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Smith and Mr. Collins. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, 7-0. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is SCPR 02-2021-06. It was a resolution awarding the asbestos consultant to Emory Environmental in the amount of $10,450. This was voted on the February 11th meeting. We did not have a number here to attach to the resolution. And we took care of that, like I say, on February 11th. There was no need to vote. This was a housekeeping so that we could have a resolution number attached to this awarding of the money to Emory Environmental. This came from us from Collier's 2 weeks ago, and we just didn't have the paperwork at the time. So that's no vote needed for that. And there is no discussion and/or vote for tonight for payment of bills, but we will, as I said earlier, discuss payment to Blackstone Valley Prep at our next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. DeMonica. Next item on the agenda is school committee comments, school liaison reports. Does anyone have any school committee comments? Mrs. Rogalski?
I was already unmuted. First, I just wanted to say thank you to the principals. I got to go in and see 3 or 4 schools last week, and I don't think people realize that I don't think there was a February break for a lot of school administrators, janitorial staff, teachers, etc. So really, thank you so much to everyone for all your hard work, for showing us around, for giving us really in-depth tours and providing answers. And second, just really quick, I don't know if any of you did music in high school, but I did chorus in high school. So this probably specifically goes out to Ms. Santo and her students, but I remember how difficult all-state chorus was. So for these 2 kids to have been accepted to the all-Eastern ensembles is really, really incredible. You have to have a very high level of talent. So it just really shows how strong Ms. Santo is and how strong these students are and how strong Cumberland is. So big congrats to them.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogalski. Ms. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to echo what Ms. Rogalski had just said. I was able to tour and get plans from all of the elementary schools and the 2 middle schools as well. And it thought has been put into ensuring the 6-foot distance with the teachers, the 3-foot distance minimum between the desks, how they're going to be eating lunch, how to rotate classes so that some will have lunch in their classroom one day, but maybe they'll be in the cafeteria the next day, which I know a lot of the younger children love the idea. So I want to say thank you for everyone at all of the schools for the time you've given us and for all the time that each and every one of you have put in over the holiday and not really getting much of your own vacation. And second to that, I'd like to bring up Mr. Bowser, who is the director of the middle school bands, did send us information with the YouTube. And I don't know if Superintendent Mitchell could put that out in his letter this week, but it is their first presentation ever of the Black History Month concert. And it is a YouTube link, and I think it would be well worth publishing. And I want to say, thank you to Mr. Bowser and all of the middle school band members who participated in this event.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Collins?
So to Mrs. Smith's point, I actually realized that I exchanged emails with Mr. Bowser because I wasn't sure how he made it. It's fascinating because the quality was excellent, but each kid performed an individual piece, and he sat there and he synced it. Like a conductor would. He synced it. And it was phenomenal, and he had it over with Google Slides. He did a presentation for Black History Month. It was incredible because I'm listening to it and I'm like, did these kids perform this live or did you? And he explained the process through email, and it was fascinating. So that was awesome. And then obviously I concur what Mrs. Regalsi and Mrs. Smith said about the principals in their preparation and opening their doors during a school vacation. They were more than accommodating, and they were apologizing to me. They're like, I'm sorry, I can't come in on Wednesday. I'm like, it's your vacation. You know what I mean? So they've left I'm fully confident in the building administration. They've left no stone unturned, and they were very candid in their discussions, telling us exactly what they need and what they're confident is going to be successful. So our children are in good hands. I'm confident.
Thank you. Any other, Mr. DeMonica?
Madam Chair, maybe we can address this to the superintendent. If we could have Mr. Blanchard reach out to the Valley Breeze and talk to them about doing the story, possibly about the cameras that we have in the wellness center, and that I'm not sure if the ones have been installed yet at Tucker Field as sports start up again, and the state tells us who can come and who can't come, that the parents can at least watch their children on the feeds. The school department here in the school committee, we approved the video cameras to go in. And I think the Valley Breeze, hopefully they could do a story about it so parents and grandparents can see their children playing sports. So if we could reach out to that, it'd be fine. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just add that the High School National Honor Society is conducting a food drive through March 12th, and that there are boxes at all of the schools across the district. So if anyone is able to donate to the food drive until March 12th. And I would echo what others have said too about the tremendous work happened over February vacation to get our schools ready. No small feat, that's for sure. Okay, if there's no other comments, the next item on the agenda is a vote to go into executive session. But Mr. Mitchell, do we have executive session tonight?
No, we do not, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Collins, second by Mrs. Rogalski. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, 7-0. Meeting is adjourned at 9:14 p.m. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.
Good night.